everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics today. Well, actually, this is Psychedelics Weekly. Joe and Kyle here. How you doing today, Kyle?
Pretty good, Joe. How are you doing?
Doing great. Beautiful. What is it, Thursday today? Yeah. Excited excited to be here with you and record. You've been all over the place and excited to catch up on that. We'll do some news first, and then we'll talk about what you've been up to with these retreats and Vital and all that kind of fun stuff.
Sounds like a plan.
Cool. So before we dig in, everybody, just want to let you know about the most amazing conference coming up in Los Angeles, March 30 through April 2. It's going to be so fun. A lot of folks are going to be there, about, I think, upwards of 1,200 people maybe with the nightlife portion. About 800 people is what we're expecting during the day. All sorts of vendors, all sorts of really great speakers, Carl Hart, Hamilton Morris, many more. Ifeateo Harvey, Sutton King. I think we're getting some really cool indigenous panels going. And yeah, this has been what has been consuming most of my time for the last 4 or 5 months. So really excited to bring that to Los Angeles in a couple months. So you can check that out at Psychedelics today. What else do we have going on? Microdosing course. People can check that out. Brand new microdosing masterclass. Jim Fadiman and Adam Bramlich put that one together. Incredible, probably the most comprehensive course on microdosing available. So please do check in on that, psychedeliceducationcenter.com. And Kyle, what's going on with Vital?
Yeah, we are launching our Vital application. So if you've been hearing us talk about it throughout the year, now is your chance to apply. So Vital is our 12-month training program, certificate in psychedelic therapies and integration, and really to help provide those psychedelic competencies, literacies, get trained in harm reduction, integration, so you can go out there into your community, be an advocate, a resource, an educator, and also serve your clients if you're a coach or therapist, to really help people work through their own experiences. So yeah, we're taking applications. You can check that out at vitalpsychedelictraining.com, and yeah, I'm sure we'll talk more in this episode about it, so yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah, it's a really incredible program. All I hear is glowing reviews. I only wish I was more involved in the program, but Kyle, Johanna, Diego, and the rest of the Vital team really have it under control and are doing really great. So excited to see what happens with this next round. Yeah, all right. So let's dig in. First bit of news. Kind of want to dig into this article. Mason Marks put it out a couple days ago, January 15th. The title is Psychedelic Surveillance Bill Would Raise Social and Economic Cost of Oregon Psilocybin Services. Subtitle, through SB 303, Senator Elizabeth Steiner seeks to overturn psilocybin client confidentiality rules days after the state health authority adopts them. Yeah. Anonymity and privacy and healthcare is a big deal. Kyle, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, when we came across this, it kind of was like, whoa, what's going on here? But yeah, it sounds like from this article by Mason Marks, the bill would expose client social, occupational, and expose the clients to social, occupational, and legal risks. But also, he's suggesting it would increase the cost of psilocybin services for clients, business, and taxpayers. So that's really interesting. So it sounds like say a university, like he's talking about the Oregon Health Science University, could collect data on clients. So the information, the data that the service centers collect would then get forwarded to the OHA, and then over two places like the Oregon Health Science University potentially to do maybe research or kind of do whatever they want with that data. So it's interesting. I wonder what the motive behind this was. I always think like having data is good, and having like ways to do research. I mean, this is so new, right? So maybe actually having access to some of that data would be really good to understand it. But I guess it's what kind of data would be available and leaked, and does that put somebody at risk of, potentially losing their job or certain things like that. So, I think we also have to be very careful around what is, being what's accessible if this bill does pass.
Yeah, it's I'd like to know more about the origins of it before I could really speculate on intent and things like that. One thing I will speculate on is a lot of the funds for these projects came from the Psychedelic Science Funders Collaborative, which is a bunch of wealthy people who are hoping to get more psychedelic science going. And part of that might be that they're trying to bake in access to data or maximize the amount of data coming out of these services. Maybe that's what's going on here. I'm not 100% sure. We should and will do more on this. Kyle, you and I were talking about getting John Dennis on and some other folks from Oregon to comment on this. Like, I think mandatory data sharing in a healthcare type scenario seems a little whack and problematic. Why should this be treated different from traditional healthcare in that privacy sense? Like, we should be aiming to treat it as close to HIPAA as we can. Mm-hmm. Like this, having HIPAA in place would be a huge hurdle, and I don't think we want full tilt HIPAA, but we should understand what like the ethos of healthcare and kind of wellness professionals is, and give people the option. Like, do you want to opt in for research? Yes, no. Awesome.
Right.
Like, it shouldn't be that hard, but like, why mandate it, right?
Right. Yeah, and Mason just makes another point here around, it's still being illegal, right? And so, like, what does that expose folks on kind of like more of a federal level if they do have access? So I'm just going to read 2 paragraphs here. The OHA's current rules reflect the text of Measure 109, which erects a data barrier between service centers where client information is stored and the hands of third parties, including government agencies, law enforcement, and corporations. That's important because despite having been legalized in Oregon, psilocybin services remained illegal under the Federal Controlled Substance Act. Steiner's SB 303 would remove this barrier. It requires service centers and facilitators to collect sensitive information about clients and send it to the OHA, the Oregon Health Authority. So government agencies would have access to detailed client records, which are currently off limits under the Measure 109 and the agency's final rule. So if SB 303 succeeds, the OHA would not only collect client records, but it would also forward them to like a university, as I mentioned. So yeah, it's interesting.
There's some substantial risk, right? Like, people say, for example, you're a senator, right, over in DC, and you receive some services. All of a sudden, your name is in this big data pool with no explicit HIPAA protection, right? Because this is likely outside the scope of HIPAA on account of federal illegality. So yeah, there's like blackmail potential here. There's all sorts of interesting things that are potential. Like, my off the cuff suggestion is, like, let's get a couple years downstream and find out how the feds are going to act first before we start collecting data, because we are introducing additional risk with data collection and sharing without appropriate anonymization protocols. But, the anonymization protocols proposed, I think, were a little weak. From what I recall, people could still be identified. Anyway, let's dig into this one more with folks from Oregon that are actually fighting this fight. And folks, if you're interested in learning more about this and getting involved from an Oregon perspective, reach out, info@psychedelicstoday.com. We'll link you up with some folks that are doing work there to work on this particular issue, probably pushing against it. Yeah. Anyway, next up, some really interesting moves out of San Francisco. So a committee in San Francisco, it's a little vague. What is a committee? Has proposed that the city of San Francisco give $5 million each to qualifying Black people as part of a reparation plan to cover economic and opportunity losses the community has endured throughout history, both due to the city's policies and the wider effects of social discrimination. I think the reason we wanted to bring this up at Psychedelics Today is because there was explicit mention of folks being harmed by the drug war. I think the quote was, personally or the direct descendant of someone incarcerated by the failed war on drugs is the language they're using. So, this is still just a proposal from a committee. The city would have to adopt this. We'll see if there's actually some traction there, but it's really, and there was a lot of other qualifiers too, right? Like, that was
need to meet like 2 out of like maybe 10 or so that they listed there. But yeah, it was interesting to see that they included the drug war, which was nice to see that they're thinking about it. I don't think I've ever seen like a proposal like this. I know Asheville, North Carolina, tried proposing something like this a number of years ago. I don't know if they ever succeeded with it, but I remember that was pretty big. I think that was right after George Floyd. They were looking at like doing reparations. But yeah, cool to see San Francisco do something similar. It looks like they're going to have the final vote in June of 2023.
That's
see if that will pass. Yeah.
So the group that looks like proposed it was the AARAC, African American Reparations Advisory Committee. So, yeah, that's good to know. So I'm just really happy the drug war is getting more bad press, and hopefully we can continue to dismantle it over time. Anything else on that one, Kyle?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I guess we'll just have to, keep an eye on it and see if they'll pass that in June.
That'd be amazing. Really interesting to watch. So next up, another marijuana moment. Kyle Yeager. Kyle, we've got to probably talk to you eventually because we keep citing you. The title here, from my home state, GOP New Hampshire lawmaker files bill to legalize psychedelics like LSD and psilocybin. That's the title here. New Hampshire doesn't even have legalized cannabis yet, and they're
just crazy.
Republicans are introducing bills like this, which is fascinating. So one, who was it? Rep. Kevin Verville. I know nothing about New Hampshire politics anymore. Been away for too long. The legislation stipulates that the possession or use of hallucinogenic drugs by a person 21 years age or older shall not be an offense. It would also specifically reduce penalties for LSD manufacture and possession by people under 21. Interesting. So I would be remiss if I didn't dig into this one further. I'm going to try to get more info for us on this one. Yeah. I still have an affinity for New Hampshire, just don't live there.
Live free or die, right? Yeah, it's interesting. Like I always think about that slogan, and they still haven't legalized cannabis. So it's always interesting. So I'm curious to see if something like this would pass. If they haven't done. I mean, medical they have right in New Hampshire, but just not recreational.
Actually, maybe one of my friends would constantly be carrying an ounce or two while driving for years and years and years, and I was so afraid because he's the kind of guy that would get searched, and he's been fine, but I think they recently decriminalized up to an ounce of possession.
Okay.
But I honestly don't know if there is medical cannabis. If there is, that's really interesting. Based on a quick Google, it looks like there is.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, cool. Yeah, what's next?
I mean,
here?
It's exciting to just see more places submit bills like this. Like, I know that Marijuana Moment also, and you might have went over this in a previous episode, but I think there's like 13 other states looking at similar bills, which is pretty cool, or like 10 or so.
It's rocking.
Awesome.
Yeah.
California, Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, Missouri, Minnesota, Montana, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Virginia. I'm guessing they're including some of the things that just passed. But it's really exciting to see more states kind of push for bills like this.
Yeah. Yeah. And, following up, we got 2 more states to run through here. This is from WCIA.com. I think it's a radio station or TV station. Illinois lawmaker introduces bill to create regulated psychedelic therapy program. This was published just yesterday, January 18th. And the measure would create an advisory board under the Illinois Department of Public Health, which would be tasked with making recommendations on regulating psilocybin. And that's pretty cool. So I imagine they're going to be looking at really similar things to what we're doing here in Colorado.
Yeah, epic.
Did you see, before we go to Missouri, did you see the thing, Apex Labs, a group in Canada, was doing psilocybin at home? like take-home psilocybin?
I did see that. I just saw that Victoria shared that on her Instagram. I didn't read the whole thing, but I did see that briefly today, and that caught my attention because I have not heard of anybody else doing at-home psilocybin testing, and that is kind of exciting.
It's
I wonder what their protocol is.
Right.
Do you know anything about it?
No, I haven't dug in at all beyond the headline, but I do find it fascinating. In-person clinical care with psychedelics is going to really exaggerate the cost. And if we're allowed to do this stuff at home, we're going to have a lot of reduced costs just overall. So I think that helps with getting more sick people well, and probably a lot of other things.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to help to reduce costs, but then, you got to think about like the safety. But again, how many people are already doing a lot of this stuff at home with like a friend or a loved one? But yeah, we do have to think about safety, and especially as like psychedelics become kind of more popular, and more and more people are doing it. Right, we're probably going to have more reports of potential fallout from that, but relatively safe, right?
Right, and this is going to be something that the psychedelic scene is going to have to negotiate for decades: safety versus access, and what level of risk is worth introducing to improve access. Some people will say zero. Some people will say a little bit of risk is okay. What is safe? Like really nothing is safe. So, improving safety profile, totally. Like psilocybin has been proven to be really safe. So like what are we really doing?
Okay, so it also sounds like I just Googled this, so I have some context. Yeah, Apex 52 is a microdose, so orally administered psilocybin drug.
Bummer.
Yeah, so it sounds like this is more possibly on the microdose scale than more medium to larger dose.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I understand.
But still cool.
Yeah, it's progress, right? Like, it's a big deal, and I think there's some military affiliation there, so it's probably microdosing for TBI and some other things could be really of import there. So, all right.
Yeah, because I think even in Oregon, right, that you have to go to a service center. I thought I saw the updated bill, and that's only maybe like 30 minutes you need to be around there for. I'm maybe wrong on that. It's been a while since I read the updates there, or I know John kind of filled us in there. But I mean, it's pretty interesting if you could have like legal take-home microdoses in the future. I mean, people are doing that already, but
yeah, right. So Oregon, the microdosing stuff is going to be a little tricky. I think it could be better. Who knows? Maybe it'll improve in time. And this stuff is barely even rolled out. I bet nobody has even purchased a microdose yet in Oregon legally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't put a lot of money on that, but maybe. And and another article from yesterday here, Kyle Yeager, marijuana moment. GOP Missouri lawmaker files psilocybin therapy bill for 2023 session. So probably very similar. And yeah, I could see a lot of progress here.
Yeah, and I'm wondering with a lot of these bills that are getting written up, I'm guessing it's probably similar. I haven't dug into all this, but kind of probably similar to, say, Oregon and Colorado, which also kind of creates a market outside of the medical realm, which, that's exciting. I know a lot of people have certain thoughts about that, but, I'm also thinking, long-term for access and how people are going to be using these outside of the traditional mental health paradigm.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So I think that hits all the news we wanted to hit today. And I'm curious on a few things. What have you been up to? You've been kind of all over the world, it seems like to me, this year.
This year has been nuts. I think I've only been in New Jersey for maybe a max of 2 weeks. At gone for a week or two, and then I'm back, and then gone. So yeah, I've just been Yeah, I've been really busy on the ground with Vital, and it's been awesome. It's been amazing. Right now, I am currently in Jamaica. So, for those that are watching the video, a little bit of a different setup here. Yeah, we just wrapped up our our fourth Vital retreat here in Jamaica. We have our next one starting on Sunday. And we were in Amsterdam before that, and then Costa Rica and Colorado. And we still have one more Colorado retreat coming up after this Jamaica retreat. So in total, we'll have 6 retreats that have been part of this Vital training, ranging from all breathwork. Costa Rica was all breathwork, and cannabis and breathwork in Colorado, and then psilocybin in countries where it's legal, like Jamaica and the Netherlands. So yeah, it's been really awesome. It's been an awesome journey to be able to kind of facilitate these sessions for students and to kind of bring it down into experience. We're doing a lot of theoretical, kind of didactic learning online in the Zoom rooms, and having the presenters present their material. But to finally meet, and I think that has been probably one of the biggest things I've been hearing from all the students, of just the importance of in-person connection, and just how important that community feel is, and that's what I think we've been really trying to focus on, is really kind of building that community, feeling like we're all part of something together, and and the experiential component can really amplify that process. But I come back to something. As we've been running through this year, just coming back to something Lenny has always said about like breath work. If you're focused on breath work as a technique, you're missing the point. And I think about that. I was thinking about this last night. I just jotting some notes down. If we're just focused on the substance or the technique, we're kind of missing the point, right? We need to take a holistic approach here. And that's something I would love to really kind of transmit through the Vital program, like this holistic approach where it's, the substance and the experience can really provide a catalyst for change and transformation, but it's also everything else that goes into it. It's the preparation, it's the set and setting, it's the community, it's the people. Breath work, there's those 5 components: group process, right? Body work, music, intensified breathing, expressive art. There's more components to it than just the technique. And so that's something I feel like I've been really kind of witnessing coming together, right? Because I'm sure some people are like, thinking about, the psilocybin experience versus breath work, but just seeing people kind of go through transformation regardless of the technique or the substance. So there's something else at play. And I really come back to our tenet of group process. And I think that really plays a really important role, especially now, right? Like, I think the pandemic has really just it just has isolated us a bunch. I think we're all still processing what the hell these past few years been, but just finally coming together, feeling supported by a community, being heard by a group of people. That's really important.
Yeah, being heard, being witnessed. For whatever reason, it feels like an important thread. Just that word "witness," bear witness to my process or whatever it is, and it feels a little biblical, but maybe that's okay in this context because we have a long cultural history of that, and I think there's a lot of power there. It's almost like being seen, being witnessed is almost more powerful than nearly anything else, it seems to me. I think about some of my own process, like my own experiences with breath work, and it was the powerful experiences, but it was also just being in that group container where there wasn't much feedback or maybe unsolicited advice, right? Because sometimes when we get into containers, there can just be a lot of that. But just being witnessed and heard in a group container was probably maybe the most powerful thing that I've really kind of taken away from that community with Dream Shadow. It's just we can just share our experience, and somebody doesn't tell me I did this right, I did this wrong, you should go explore this and that. It's
that's your experience, and we're just listening to it, and feeling it and being with you with it.
There's a lot to it. Ken, what was his name? Ken Sloan. He's a big time breathwork guy. I'm friends with Stan. He, when I had a conversation with him ages ago, inserted safety. So there's 6 elements to holotropic breathwork. It kind of blew my mind. I was like, okay, decade plus deep into this stuff, and you're adding one, but it makes sense, right? It's a really helpful one. The more safe, the more comfortable somebody is feeling, the deeper they can go. And I think that comes in time with a lot of these things, right?
Yeah. Safety is an interesting word. We were actually exploring that at our last retreat, because safety is so subjective. Like, as facilitators, we can try to do everything possible, especially physically, right, to like create a safe container. But when we are in heightened states, like sometimes our safety may feel threatened, right? Or we get activated. And Alice tossed out this word, and I'm not too, she grabbed it from somebody else. I forget where this comes from, maybe Renee Brown, but brave spaces. And I thought that was interesting, right? Like having the courage to show up in a space to explore, and, you know, doing our best to create that feeling of safety, but, you know, we can't always create that for everybody, right? As much as we try, there's things inside of us that, you know, we may not actually feel safe in groups, right? Like, you know, you hear that a lot. Like, I don't know if I would actually want to do this in a group. And, you know, sometimes when people come together and they're there, they actually like do really well. But there's a lot of that stuff that's just like hardwired in our nervous system, that may not always make us feel 100% safe. So I've been playing around with that a little bit too. Like, you know, there's other elements there that we can explore. Safety is an interesting one, but yeah, that is a key component, right? Like creating a safe space and container for people, but just being a little bit more nuanced. That sometimes it's really subjective based on a person, their previous experiences and whatnot.
Right. Moving the nervous system into a state of safety is like a real trick. And yeah, I think it's slightly different than what we want to think about. It's like, you know, safer cars. Are the airbags better? You know, it's more like, is the body in that kind of more relaxed, open, receptive state? And not just like lots of character armor coming up and like blocking things, right? Encouraging folks to soften over time. I pulled up Brave Spaces here. It's a cool idea. Brave Space, a classroom environment that acknowledges the challenges that both students and faculty have when attempting to have discussion around difficult and or sensitive topics such as race, power, privilege, and the various forms of oppression for the purpose of learning. Very different from Safe Space, right? It's kind of similar, but it's also just like, hey, we're going into this thing. It's going to be a little hard, but I promise we're going to be better on the other side.
Does it say where that comes from, or who turned?
I pulled this from like Maryland, but let's see.
Okay.
Developed by this document was developed by Victoria Stubbs, LICSW, LCSWC, I think in Maryland. The paper is called "The 6 Pillars of a Brave Space." So there's tools out there. It sounds like Brené Brown is an inspiration for it as well. Like, this is really in line with what Brené Brown is. How do you say her name?
Renee Brown? I forgot.
Obviously a massively successful author, influencer, and powerful thinker trying to get people.
But now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think it came from her. I forget. I'll have to get with Alice and figure out where she found that from. I think she said she grabbed that actually from another training that had to do with race. Right on. And one thing that we haven't really dug into at length yet is for Vital, we're kind of leveraging the 5 elements. And you and I had an interesting conversation about this the other day. From your kind of shamanic training with the elements, you go towards the medicine wheel. And for me, I go towards like the Western esoteric tradition, like alchemy, astrology, etc. But how do we want to think about the elements that are kind of included here? Well, yeah, I mean, I think when we originally brought that up, we said it could mean so many different things to so many different people, right? Like even when we were like experimenting, bringing this into Vital. And there were a lot of reasons why we like that, because people could think about it in a lot of different ways, depending on what kind of like, framework or tradition you come from, right? The way I've been really thinking about it, and I think we liked it because we said, what are the vital elements of like psychedelic integration, psychedelic therapy, harm reduction. And so using it that way, what are the vital elements there? But then also weaving in the elements of nature. So air, fire, earth, and water and ether. And so when I think about that, I think about seasons typically, and then thinking about, what does that represent to you, right? And how can we actually use those in different practices? So water, we use our water element in conjunction with our experiential retreat and navigating the psychedelic space. I mean, when I think of water, I think of depth, I think of emotion, kind of going into the unconscious, right? Ideally, if we had like a time to do that, I think that would be during kind of like the fall and winter. But it's also nice to do these retreats in nice places where it's warm. So there is something too about like the seasons, like how can we get more in tune with the seasons? And to me, that's also like weaving in a little bit of my background with like eco-psychology, right? Like during the winter, like we start to focus more like on the dreams, right? We focus more internally. That hibernation mode comes in. Unless you live in a warm place year round, which I'm finding that out being in Jamaica for a few weeks. I'm like, is it summer? I still keep forgetting it's January. But how do we start to attune a little bit more to the natural world and maybe follow those cycles a little bit more? I feel like we're kind of out of sync with it. And when I think about my experiences with psychedelics or breathwork, there's always a lot of nature elements to it. How do I slow down? How do I get more in sync with the seasons? And just have a little bit more compassion. Oh, it's winter. Like I am wanting to do a little bit more kind of like daydreaming, visioning, sleeping in a little bit, kind of hanging out in that dream world, working with the unconscious. But I find that is really good material for the spring, right? As things start to bubble up, it starts to become alive. Right, the sun's returning. It's that like kind of fiery element. Things are kind of birthing up, and how do you then put what you've been kind of stewing on all winter long into action to plant those seeds? And so, I mean, I really just like the elements because I'm also into nature and gardening. I feel like it's just really great metaphors for working with these experiences. And again, for me, it's like these experiences have always tied me back to trying to get in touch with nature. And what better way of actually just thinking about these elements? And from some of my training in my undergrad, there's some of those things of like, how do you use the elements to clear, right? Like to actually like meditate on fire or wind, oh, okay, I have like all this like stuck energy in my mind. Like how could we, visualize the wind coming in and kind of clearing that out, right? We usually associate air and mind together. Or, thinking also about like, different rituals, like little fire ceremonies, right? Like burning what you want to get rid of, right? Like actually using the element of fire, doing a little journaling activity, which we did in Costa Rica. I think we were trying to, we did a little activity where we wrote what we were trying to get rid of in 2022 and then feeding that to the fire, right? And actually, just letting that burn away. And so, I think there's like really interesting things and kind of rituals and practices that you can actually do with the elements to help feed your own inner work, your own inner practice and self-development.
I like that.
But curious to see how you kind of think about it as well.
I like the very really super duper basic. There's elements to this work, and here's the classical elements as a metaphor. But really, there's a lot. I almost brought up using the tarot as an integration tool yesterday in class when I was teaching, and I'm always hesitant because people have such a strong reaction. But, I think we have pretty good understanding that working with archetypes generally helps us work through things, helps us process and get a little bit of depth. So that to me is like the prime utility of tarot for integration and these types of things. How do we use these metaphors, meditate on them, and get something from them, right? And move on to the next thing. I love your idea of seasonality there, and maybe we get a message over here, but maybe that's better to process in the spring.
Yeah, maybe think, I'm like, do we shift the timing and schedule around? We can't do that for next year, but maybe we start off in the winter and have experiences depending on the seasons. But yeah, it's a little bit more planning. But it would be cool to be a little bit more in touch with that.
That's fascinating. I'll have to flip it for Australia. But that's actually really interesting, right? Like starting from like the cold but really dormant but still very alive environment, and moving it all the way through. You always do this really well, the seeds and growth analogy. Like there's all this stuff that's going to grow. As soon as the conditions become amazing, it'll flourish, and then they'll decay, and the cycle just keeps going, right? It's that birth, death, like in nature, rebirth kind of cycle. And we can learn from that. Even if there's not literally an afterlife or rebirth, whatever, we can still learn and do our life better while we're here. Feel healthier, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. We've been talking about we just started our integration module this week, and something that came up was just this. We can get really nuanced with integration. Is it goal oriented? Is it action oriented? I have all these visions. I need to like work on it and have accountability around it. But also too, like how much of that is just driven by our capitalistic society of like progress and work, right? And how do we pull back on it? Like again, like thinking about like the winter time, how do we like maybe allow that hibernation to happen, allow like kind of let that vision to start to like percolate in the dreams, start to work with it in a way. And it's okay to sit there and let it form. I remember reading this paper a number of years ago around procrastination, and they were saying in procrastination you're actually doing a lot of organizing in your mind, and even though you might be putting that project off, you're actually taking time to actually synthesize what's going on. So then, you may wait till the last minute to do that paper. I remember reading this in grad school and going, oh yeah, that is definitely me. I wait till the last minute to write this paper. But really thinking about it, I'm thinking about it all the time. And, it's just taking me a while to kind of let it stew, instead of just like, again, just putting it down every day. It's like, okay, I need, and that's just the way I process. I need to like let those visions and things kind of stew, and then, and by a certain time, like, all right, let's go through and do this. I'm feeling that right now, like trying to envision Vital for the future. It's like this whole winter, been traveling, but I'm also been like, letting it kind of stew a little bit. And it's like, okay, I feel like I'm starting to then, as the season progresses, we'll have a better idea. Start putting that into action when the spring comes.
It's fantastic you've been able to sit with it for so long and keep developing. And one thing I believe you and I are going to keep doing here is continually trying to improve, right? Continually trying to make it a better, deeper, more valuable experience for everybody involved, from the staff to the students, right?
Yeah.
And that reflects there is no real end. It's cyclical, and we're just going to keep trying.
Yeah. Vital will look way different probably, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But that's that integration process too, right? That I keep trying to remind people. The image draws you forward, whatever that image was in your psychedelic breathwork, whatever you're doing, right? And we have to like follow that. And sometimes that image gives us the courage to step forward, make that first step. And it's going to change over time, and that's totally fine, right? But as long as you're continuing to be curious around that and walk towards it, that's the goal. Might change, but it's totally fine.
So now how have the retreats been? So I was with you for the one in the summer in Colorado. We decided you and I couldn't afford that much time away from work. But Yeah, that was a really fun one. Cannabis, psychedelic, well, kind of psychedelic experiences through breathwork and cannabis. And we did our format, and Daniel McQueen did his. It was really great. It was really awesome to see how deep things got for folks.
Yeah, the retreats have been awesome. Starting off with that one was really great. And I think some people even kind of like redeveloped a new relationship with cannabis, which was really cool, because I think a lot of people are like really skeptical when it comes to cannabis because it's so recreational most of the time for a lot of folks. And to develop a little bit more intention around how you use that. That's a perfect example of, it's not always the substance or the technique, right? It's the container in which you're using that in, and always kind of going back to, say, kind of like Lenny's philosophy that comes from that Whiteheadian perspective. It's that amplification of our own experience. And so we have these tools that can help to amplify our experience, whether that is with breathwork, cannabis, psilocybin, other medicines. But it's kind of like that container and that intention that we're bringing to that space that can help to really deepen that. So that was really cool. We're definitely excited for February again, to see how that that unfolds again with Daniel. It was really fun working with him. And then we had the two psilocybin retreats, and those were really good. People went deep, and the thing that has been really interesting is that we're also integrating our breathwork training framework into these retreats. So doing this experiencer sitter pair, and it sounds like this has been the first time that both of the retreat partners that we partner up with have done this before. So it feels totally new to them, and that's been a really interesting kind of learning process to kind of share this format with a retreat partner that they just do large groups. Everybody's down at once. And I think that's been one of the coolest things is just seeing people show up and have that experience sitting. And I think people get a lot out of it. And I think there's some like a little bit of hesitancy of like, I wish I could have like another dosing session. But then actually getting a lot out of it, being like, wow, that was really profound. That was really powerful to just sit with somebody and feel the whole group energy. And so that's been actually really exciting to like incorporate like that framework that we come from and kind of applying it to the psychedelic experience. So I'm excited to kind of explore that a little bit more. And then, our breathwork session, I think, people really, again, some people were really surprised, like, wow, breath can do that. That's always really exciting as well when because I was always really skeptical of breath work, and then I've just had very, very, very profound experiences with it, and thinking it's really what we're bringing to it. It's not really specifically about the technique.
Building up someone's sense of agency, right? That's the big thing for me, realizing it's in you, it's not in the substance necessarily. That gets a little complicated with plant medicines, right? We can say that about LSD, but when we start talking about ayahuasca or mushrooms, like there is this concept of the intelligence inside, other than human intelligence, that could be very powerful, right?
But again, like what is your relationship to that entity or that intelligence, right? And I think that's the interesting thing to think about is like, how do you start to develop a relationship between that thing? So like, you could have a little bit more agency in the relationship versus just letting that whole thing kind of take over. And I think we need to think about that a little bit more.
Absolutely. You just got done your retreat in Jamaica. You did one in Costa Rica as well. You're about to go into another Jamaica retreat. It's just really cool you get to do that, especially Johanna and Alice. Alice is a team member as well, helping put on these events, and also a Vital student, which is really, really fun.
She comes from the Dream Shadow world.
Yeah, that's our breathwork lineage. And really, it's just cool we finally get to do this stuff with our students and, explain a lot. And how has it been working with people like on the ground? Yeah.
Great. Yeah. I mean, it keeps reminding me why I do this work, and why I keep showing up, because I'm sure you feel it too. There's lots of ups and downs of running a business and kind of growing and trying to have impact. And, sometimes it can be a bumpy ride. And so being able to like show up and see that and just be with people, it's like, oh yes, this is why I continue to show up to do this work. And yeah, I don't know, something else that really kind of like I think about it just from the educational perspective, and I've been really kind of processing with Johanna all week about just having more of this like kind of didactic learning that kind of comes from like academia versus trying to create like a little bit more of a process oriented approach that can like also lead to transformation. I mean, like, this is like my education at Burlington College. I mean, it wasn't just sitting in front of a lecture. Sometimes teachers would lecture, but it was really just a group of people sitting around a table for 3 hours talking about the homework that we were supposed to do. And sometimes people never did it. And then class would get really awkward. But that also challenged you to be like, I should probably do my homework because I don't want to sit in class all awkward and not have nothing to say. But it was really cool to kind of be on the same level as the instructors and really use that as a way to process what's actually going on in our minds and to dig deeper. And then it was so experientially oriented. We always had so many practices to engage in. And it felt like I was just like doing inner work constantly in this program. And that's something like I really want to kind of keep alive within this Vital program. Is like, this is, we can have the intellectual aspect, but also this is personal development too. And, if you want to call it spiritual development, some people are going down that path. Like, education should be kind of oriented towards that, for some sort of transformation. You're going through an experience, you're getting in touch with yourself, you're learning, you're changing. And that's what excites me, I think. It might be different for a lot of people that maybe come from more of a kind of a traditional type of academic background. I always feel really fortunate to just be part of like such a weird program as an undergrad and just have so many classes that were just so experiential, and it was mostly just around our own inner process. And I just kept thinking like the psychology students getting degrees at regular schools probably aren't doing this much inner work. And why wouldn't psychology orient towards doing your own inner work like that? It's kind of bizarre.
There's some folks out there that really discount the utility of inner work. Yeah, like how much does it really matter? I was talking to a neuroscientist just yesterday, recording with them, and the attitude towards like depth approaches is really fascinating. Kind of like contempt almost. But I get it. It's totally disjunct from, what they've been trained to understand about the psyche. So it's, it's going to take time. Like what I want to see is a multimodal approach and people just understanding that we need to study all these approaches, not just one. 'Cause odds are very good that one approach is not enough. We contain multitudes, right?
No. Yeah, we need a holistic approach.
Cool. So anything else we want to mention about Vital or anything you've been up to there?
Again, if you're listening and you want to kind of take the deep dive with us for 12 months, we kick off on April 17th with an intro call, and then our classes will kick off on April 18th. That's a Tuesday. Classes will be on Tuesdays from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Every week for each module, and each module ranges in the amount of weeks. Could be 7 weeks, could be 8 weeks. Applications, we are accepting them at this moment. And if you're listening to this before January 29th, we do have you do have the opportunity of joining a book club that we're doing. So we're trying to kick off Vital a little bit early with a book club, and so you would need to submit your application and then also pay the deposit and start your tuition payments before then to get enrolled in the book club, which should be fun. We're doing part of the way with Psychonaut Also reading some chapters out of Psychedelic Psychotherapy that was edited by Tim Reed and Maria Papasora, and some other things. And Johanna will be help running that, which will be fun. So yeah, applications open until end of February, but we do have early bird specials for getting your application and tuition in earlier. And so yeah, if you've been wanting to have a more comprehensive program, take a journey for 12 months with us, develop those psychedelic competencies and literacies, and become an informed psychedelic practitioner, join us at Vital, and that's vitalpsychedelictraining.com.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thanks for that. And yeah, folks, this is definitely a transformative program. People are just raving about their experience through this whole thing. And I think one of the funniest parts to me, and it maybe most endearing, was somebody maybe a month or two in saying, if this is all I got, it was worth it. And I'm like, whoa, well, it's a little bit hyperbole maybe, but like, it's fascinating that people are that stoked, right? And it just shows how much effort you put in, Kyle, and the team put in to make this thing just that amazing.
Yeah, thank you. And if any of the Vital students are listening, thank you for showing up and being part of this first cohort. It's been really a blessing and just really honored to be doing this with everybody. So couldn't do it without you. And it's really fun to be on the journey with you all.
Yeah, amazing. Cool. And yeah, reminder before we wrap here, Convergence is coming up March 30 through April 2. It's our first ever conference we're doing, and there's integrated nightlife, art installations, a lot of room for community building, a lot of talks, a wellness dome as well. So it's going to be awesome, and I hope to see you there. And if you're in LA, it's that much easier for you. Yeah, cool.
I'm excited for it. It looks awesome. The venue looks so cool.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible. Yeah, we keep coming up with new ideas. That's one of the problems. We got to slow down. Just pick a couple. Yeah. All right. Thank you for listening, everybody. Thank you, Kyle. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.